Hey guys, it's Amy at Zoe Beck, and I'm going to do kind of a chatty video on an idea and a video that Britta Bohler just put up on Wednesday. So it is, why do I reread? And I think this is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart because I am a big rereader. And so I know not everybody is a rereader. Some people never reread, and I don't quite understand. But anyway, and then there's some people who only read very sporadically and stuff. And so I am not one of those people. So when I saw her video, I was really excited for it. Again, I will have it linked down below so you can watch that. She didn't make it quite a tag, but she had certain points that she made it. So I wrote down some of them. I'm not sure I got everything, but I'm going to try to go through them and kind of just talk through. So it's just kind of, we're just going to chat here about rereading, because to me, it is a big deal. It is a huge part of my reading life. It is something that I have every once in a while tried to curb because everybody else here on feels like, okay, I don't know if it's true, but it feels like people on BookTube don't want to reread. They want to read all the new stuff, or, read stuff that they've never read before so they'd have new things to talk about. And I just can't read like that. It's, I love reading new books, and of course I love acquiring new books. But there's something about rereading that has always appealed to me. I have been a rereader since I was a kid. The first books that we had, I reread multiple, like dozens of times. And then the first books I pulled out from my grade school library, I checked out the same ones over and over. The Boxcar Children by Gertrude Chandler Warner. I pulled out the first books, the first three, I think, was in a bind up in the library, and I pulled that out so many times when the librarian asked if she could introduce me to other books and other authors. Even though I read other stuff and I checked out other stuff, but I was rereading this one so many times over the years I was there. And then I actually did 3 book reports on the same Thomas Edison biography while they're at school. Anyway, because I got the same book out and I loved that book. Anyway, I don't remember that one, what the name of it was, but it was about Thomas Edison. Anyway, so again, starting from there, I have been a rereader all the way through and into my adult life. Definitely, I didn't do much in high school and college, but after that, I started rereading a lot of stuff. So again, I go through fluctuations of what I'm picking up. Most of it's series, and a lot of it's standalones that are just favorites of mine. So, but to say how much do I reread? So I don't know all those years that I could say, oh, I read a certain percentage. Even in the years of being on BookTube, and I've done a lot of stats, most of my years here, even here on BookTube, is 15 to 25% of my reading has been rereads. So my reading, again, my numbers have fluctuated on how many books I read per year and my way of tracking it, but I have had a lot of rereads. So like the first 6 months of 2023, I have already reread 20% of the books that I read. I've read 130 books. 24 of them, I think, is 20%. So, is that right? It's 26? No, maybe 26 books I've reread. And yeah, 26. So 20% of my reading in the first 6 months. And that's typical. Again, between 15 and 25%. It kind of fluctuates on the year, but I would say that was about typical for rereading for me. So again, I'm a big rereader. So, so of how much I do, I do a lot. Like I would say, so again, that's saying 1 in every 5 books that I read is a reread, which is seems like a lot, but it doesn't feel like it, because again, usually I'm binging the rereads, so I don't feel it so much. It's like I give myself a couple weeks and something. So like, what do I reread? So technically talking about that, I binge a lot of series or in a reread, either to catch up on the series. So like, I've read a book or two and then I need to read those again in order to continue the series. A lot of times I've read the first book in a series and now the whole series is out. So I reread the first book and then continue on. There are series like some of my favorite authors like Nalini Singh and Anne Bishop. There's certain ones that I will reread the whole series. Now again, Anne Bishop's The Others series was 5 books, and I've read those in the 4 years that I've known that series. I've already reread it 4 times. 4.5 times, you know, kind of like partially. And like Nalini Singh, I have 2 of her series that I adore, so I reread many of those books. One series has 21 books, and the other one has 15, maybe a little bit more than that. I don't know, but I've reread all those. A lot of those last year. I did a reread of a lot of them. And this year I might binge the other. I did one. Anyway, point is that it's a lot of series that I do. I do standalones and some classics. Jane Austen July happens to be happening right now. I've already reread 2 of Jane Austen's novels because they are my favorites. And I just adore taking the time to reread those during Jane Austen July, because I wouldn't pick them up other times. Like, it just doesn't occur to me. I'm like, I'll just wait till July and read them. But anyway, I still pick them up like more times now than I did before. But I did used to pick them up every few years and reread them. And now I read them pretty much every year. But again, favorite books, standalones. Some of them most of them are favorites from adulthood on. I don't have a lot of childhood favorites or anything that I reread often, except for like Pride and Prejudice and Three Musketeers. I've read several times, and because I read them when I was in high school, and I've read them multiple times while I was like, you know, an adult and stuff. So there are some of those, but most of the rereadings I'm doing is stuff that I've read in the last since I was an adult. We don't want to go into how many years. Anyway, the point is that that's kind of it. Anyway, and so I even had a whole system on how I calculated or how I marked my rereads back in the day. So I've been a big rereader forever. So I reread a lot of stuff, but certain, like, I would say series is number 1, the things I do. And then there's a few standalones, classics, and nonfiction, and just fantasy that I pick up every once in a while as a reread. So the next thing is, why do I reread? So what do I get out of taking the time to reread a book that I have already read, that I know is going to happen, that I shouldn't be surprised about? Now, there are certain books that I revisit that I've only read once or twice, and I don't remember everything, because it's been quite a few years. And what I mean by quite a few years is at least 5. Most of the time, I was not considering a reread a book that I was really revisiting unless it was over 10 years. I'm older now. I shortened it to 5 years of saying, you know, I might not remember everything. Now, who knows? It might be a year or 2. I'm kidding. Anyway, point is that I still reread a lot of stuff, but it was like certain like standalones, or, you know, as I said, there's certain books that I only read that I read every, like, okay, one book that I read every like 10 years, it seems, is Helter Skelter. I read it first when I was 18, and so I've read it like almost every 10 years. I read it at least once, because I have some, you know, weird feelings towards it. But the point is that I have like a memory of it, and then I always go, well, I kind of start forgetting some of the details, and then I reread and I go, oh yeah, okay, I remember all that stuff now, because it's weirdly fascinating. Anyway, so there, as I said, those books I kind of do every once in a while, and then there are, again, the series I read, and then sometimes it's just, I feel like, I think Britta mentioned it too, is that somebody mentions a book, and you're like, I would start thinking about it, because I go, oh, I haven't read that book in a really long time, and I'd be thinking, do I want to revisit it? You know, is it one that I've reread, or is it one that, you know, I reread all the time? Do I still want to reread it? Yeah, usually. But so most of the time it's just mood. Like, I am trying to stop a reading slump. So it happens every once in a while where I start several books in a row and I don't want to continue them. For some reason, I DNF quite a bit too. I should put this out here. I do DNF quite a bit. If you watch my channel, you know. Point is that sometimes when I get to where I've started too many books in a row that I don't want to complete, like I just lost interest, or I'm just not liking it enough to continue, and I'm still like, I don't know if I want to get rid of it yet and fully DNF it. A lot of times I will pick up a reread in order to just kind of stop the reading slump from happening by reading something that I don't have to think too much about. Like I'm revisiting something that's just familiar, and it gives me joy to go back to those characters and go back to that world. So again, with the series, I just love getting back immersed in certain worlds, and then I reread several books in a row again, certain series, I do that a lot of when I do that, because then I read several series in a row. I mean, technically I just did that in May, or yeah, end of April, early May. I started the Beyond series again because I finally owned them all, and I had read the first 4 novels. Yeah, so I'd read the first 4 novels and 2 novellas, and I wanted to read the whole series. So I binged the whole series, 9 books, and several novellas and short stories and stuff. And then I even went on to the companion series, 3 more books, and finished those off right away. Like, I didn't wait. Like, I just kept going. And so, but part of that was a reread. So, so I do that quite a bit. But it started out as I just wanted to get back into that series sometime this year. And I thought, I'll just read a book here and there, because I've reread, I've read the first couple books a couple times before the other books finally came out. And yeah, well, I just binged the whole series. So anyway, that's just, most of the time I do use it for, as I said, to hold off a reading slump. To me, rereading is easier than starting new books, of course, because you already are introduced to those characters or that world, and depending on what kind of book it is. But it's very much a comfort thing. So I think that's why I reread a lot, is because sometimes I don't, other things are going on in my life, and I can't always focus on a new book, and by letting myself revisit something or go back into something, it just makes me happy, and I don't have to worry about what other books are worrying about. Yeah, that's kind of how that goes. So I thought this was really interesting, because I hadn't thought about this in a long time. So she brought up, Britta brought up, is, do you read like the whole book when you do your rereads, or you just read the parts that you like want to read, like the fun parts or your favorite parts of the books? And it was really funny when I thought about this, is that I remember as because again, I didn't do too much as a teenager, but I also remember as a teenager, that is the way I reread, was I read my favorite parts of books. I didn't read the whole book. I didn't have time for that. And so I remember pulling books that were favorites, and I would only be able to read, sections of it. And that would have to do, because I didn't have time to read the whole book. And I think as I've gotten older, I've really enjoyed the fact I'm making the time to reread. I'm not skimming through these books. I mean, there's a couple books that I kind of skim over the parts that I don't really care about. There are certain sections I've never enjoyed, but mostly the books I reread, I want to read the whole book. And I've been enjoying that. A new thing that I've picked up in the last, I would say 8 or 9 years, is I started getting audiobooks for my favorite books. So I have physicals of most of them, and then I also have the audio. So I can either do an do both of them at different times, where I'm at, or I could just do the audio. So like, again, last year I think it was last year, I did the whole Psy Changeling series by Nalini Singh, and I did it by audio. And it was just, I did it kind of out of order though. But the point is that I reread the whole series. I think that was last year. Anyway, point is that at one point I did the whole series again. It's like 20 books, as I said. And it just, it was so much fun to listen to it rather than read it, even though I've read it all the other times. There's a couple of them I've read by audio before, but the ones I didn't own, I still don't own all of them. I got them from the library. So I just waited for the library holds to come in, and then I listened to those, which is why I listened to it out of order. But it's a series I adore, so it didn't matter when I read them. But it was neat to do it a different way than normal for me on that one. So it was like changing up the way I read it. It didn't make it new or anything. It just was more, it was just still fun. I just enjoyed it. And so I do like that. So as I said, recently though, most of the rereads I read the whole book. I don't do a lot of the piecemeal or the little parts, like my favorite part, just go back and read the small parts. If it's a book that I'm continuing a series and I can't remember all the details, I will go back and kind of skim through and pick out the parts that I want to reread before I start the next book, if it's been soon enough and I remember enough. But if I don't remember enough, then I'll just reread the whole thing, because it's just easier that way. And then I'll have all the details in my head. And then the last thing she kind of talked about was why not to reread. And I totally understand that people don't have all the time in the world, that we all have jobs and families and commitments and stuff. And a lot of people don't want to waste time revisiting books that they've read before. They have had that experience. They will enjoy, they enjoyed it or they didn't. And then they move on and go on to new stuff. And that they're more excited about that. And I understand that because to a certain point, that's that's my book buying issues, is that I keep buying books because I'm excited to try them and I'm excited to get to them. But I also have this feeling that, and I don't think everybody feels that way, is that I want to revisit stuff and enjoy going back. And so, again, is that I've tried to curb my rereading just to see if I could do it. And I just can't. Like, again, I will read several books in a row that are new to me, but I will have to slip in a reread pretty soon maybe a couple weeks go by, and then I'll be like, okay, I need to reread a couple books. And it's just, I don't know if it's just the way I've gotten to that habit, or it's just something that makes me feel good. I mean, it's my mental health. That's what I do to put off anything that's in my head that I don't want to deal with and stuff. So again, I do have the whole, I want to read everything new or everything that I buy. And I don't make the time for it because I know that I'm going to reread, because I know that I will crack. So just last week, I was trying to hold off for Jane Austen July. I was going to read Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion later in the month because I was trying to get through Northanger Abbey, which again is also a reread, but it's not one of my favorites. And so I was trying to get through that. And I think I got to Wednesday and it was a really hard day at work. And before I left work, I go, that's it, we're done. And I switched over to Pride and Prejudice, and of course, that was glorious. And so I reread that, and then I reread Persuasion right after it. Because it was just calling to me. I couldn't hold off. I knew I was going to get to do that reread. I told myself a couple months ago, oh, I'm not going to reread them this year. I read them all I read those 2 last year. I'm going to wait. No. It was like, as soon as I was in Jane Austen July, it was a struggle not to pick up Pride and Prejudice or Persuasion. And I listened to those both on audio, and they were, again, fantastic. So, and then this week, or today, we'll talk about today. So I have certain books I want to get done, and I had finished a couple of them this week that I'll talk about on my, weekly update. But I was like trying to figure out what I want to read next. And then I was thinking, oh, well, listen to this. Then this book I should really listen to and get far. I'll read it every day, blah, blah, blah. No, I had like break at work today, and I went, oh, forget it. We're going back and reading an Alingi Sing. So it's no surprise that I restarted my favorite of the books in that series, which is Silver Silence. So anyway, that happened today. So I listened to half of that audiobook at work. I was working. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's just, but I had all these plans, and of course but I have to, as I said, it's one of those things where I understand that maybe I shouldn't reread as much because I don't get through as many things. This year I have changed my tracking method of all of it as I've counted all my rereads in the past, but like I'm more counting, those are books I read this year. I mean, I'm not skimming them. I'm reading them fully. So I've counted every book this year, even if it's been a reread, as a book read. So if you follow me on Instagram, that stuff is linked down below in case you want to, but I put down every book that I read on there. And, some of them are rereads and some of them are new books. Again, 20% of my reading is rereads. So that's kind of how it goes. So anyway, that's kind of it on here. That's all the stuff I wrote down, but I'm really fascinated to see how many people are rereaders. I know why you wouldn't want to be a reader or take the time to do as much rereading. Again, I'm extreme in that. I think, I don't think a lot of people reread 20% of their books, of the books that they read in a year are rereads. But I would say that I'm, again, 15 to 25%. It matters on the year how many rereads I do. And it's just a consistent, at least through my adult reading life, for sure. I mean, I did it when I was a kid too, but I don't have any of that tracking. Anyway, so let me know what you think about rereading, if you guys are big rereaders, or are you just like ones who dabble every once in a while, pick out a reread because somebody mentioned a book, they're like, oh, I remember that book. Or do you plan your rereads, like certain classics that you want to revisit that maybe you don't remember very well? Or are you like me, big series rereader who will just dive into my favorite series, either to go back or just part of the series? It doesn't have to be the whole series, just part of it. Or to actually restart the series so you can finish the series, which is a thing I do a lot too. So let me know how you guys, if you do any rereading, or I would encourage anybody who is a rereader or wants to talk about rereading to do this. And please make sure you watch Britta Bohler's video if you haven't already, because again, she did a really good job on that. And I just wanted to add stuff for me from my experiences, again, as being a big rereader. So anyway, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.